Chapter 1. The Storm's Gift. The tempest raged across the Caribbean waters like a living beast, its claws of wind and rain tearing at everything in its path. Captain Marcus Blackwood stood at the helm of the Sovereign's Revenge, his weathered hands gripping the wheel as waves crashed over the bow of his ship. 3 years had passed since he'd abandoned his former life as Marcus Thornfield, heir to a shipping empire worth $200 million. 3 years since the scandal that destroyed everything he'd believed in. The irony wasn't lost on him that the fortune built on legitimate shipping had driven him to piracy. But when your own brother orchestrates your downfall, frames you for embezzlement, and steals your fiancée, the line between right and wrong becomes beautifully blurred. Marcus had chosen the freedom of the seas over the suffocating betrayal of civilization. "Captain!" First Mate Rodriguez shouted over the howling wind. "Ship breaking apart off the starboard bow." Marcus squinted through the driving rain and spotted the luxury yacht being torn apart by the merciless waves. The vessel was listing dangerously, its white hull cracked like an eggshell. Most captains would have sailed past. Survival was paramount in waters like these. But something made Marcus change course. "All hands on deck. Prepare the rescue boats," he commanded. His crew looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. They'd followed him into countless battles and raids, but rescuing strangers in a hurricane was suicide. Still, they obeyed. Marcus Blackwood had never led them astray. The rescue was chaos incarnate. 2 of his men nearly drowned retrieving survivors from the sinking yacht. When they finally hauled the last person aboard the Sovereign's Revenge, Marcus counted 7 rescued souls huddled on his deck like drowned rats. But it was the woman who caught his attention. Even soaked and shivering, she possessed an undeniable elegance. Auburn hair plastered to her face couldn't hide her striking green eyes, which burned with defiance rather than gratitude. She clutched a waterproof bag against her chest as if it contained her very soul. "Thank you for saving us," she said, her voice steady despite her chattering teeth. "I'm Dr. Isabella Cordova." Marcus studied her carefully. Something about her name tugged at his memory, but he couldn't place it. "Captain Blackwood, you're safe now." As his crew distributed blankets and rum to the survivors, Marcus noticed Isabella watching him with calculating eyes. She wasn't looking at him like a grateful victim. She was studying him like a puzzle to be solved. "That yacht wasn't just caught in the storm," she said quietly, moving closer to him. "It was sabotaged." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What makes you say that?" "Because I know who ordered it." Isabella's green eyes hardened. "My research was getting too close to the truth. Someone wanted me dead, Captain Blackwood. Or should I say, Marcus Thornfield." The world seemed to tilt beneath Marcus's feet. He grabbed her arm, perhaps too roughly. "How do you know that name?" "Because I've been investigating Thornfield shipping for 6 months. I know about the money laundering, the arms smuggling, the blood diamonds. I know about the brother who destroyed you and the empire he's built on your ruined reputation." Isabella's voice was barely audible over the wind. "And I know you're innocent." Marcus released her arm, his mind reeling. For 3 years, he'd believed himself alone in the world, betrayed by everyone he'd trusted. Now this mysterious woman claimed to hold proof of his innocence? "Why should I believe you?" he asked. Isabella opened her waterproof bag and pulled out a tablet, somehow still functional despite the ordeal. The screen showed financial records, shipping manifests, photographs, a mountain of evidence he'd never seen before. "Because, Mr. Thornfield, I'm the federal prosecutor who was supposed to put you in prison. Instead, I discovered the truth about what your brother did to you, and now someone's trying to kill me for it." Lightning illuminated the ship in stark white relief, and Marcus saw his past and future colliding in the form of this enigmatic woman. The storm was passing, but he sensed that the real tempest was just beginning. As the Sovereign's Revenge cut through the calming waters toward the nearest port, Marcus found himself studying Isabella Cordova with new eyes. She held the key to his redemption, but in his experience, keys could lock doors as easily as they opened them. Chapter 2. Secrets in Paradise. The tropical island of San Esperanza rose from the azure waters like an emerald jewel, its hidden coves and dense jungle making it the perfect refuge for those who lived outside the law. Marcus had established his base here 2 years ago, building a compound that rivaled any luxury resort. Old habits died hard, and even as a pirate, he refused to live without certain comforts. Isabella stood on the beach, watching his crew unload supplies from the ship. She'd been quiet during the 3-day journey to the island, spending most of her time studying the evidence on her tablet and observing Marcus with those penetrating green eyes. Now, in the golden afternoon light, she seemed almost ethereal. "Welcome to paradise," Marcus said, approaching her with 2 glasses of rum. "Though I suspect you're not here for the scenery." She accepted the drink, but didn't taste it. "Your island is beautiful, but we both know I can't stay long. Every day I'm missing increases the chances they'll bury this evidence forever. And every day you're with me increases the chances you'll end up dead," Marcus replied bluntly. "My brother Nathaniel has resources I can't match. Private military contractors, government connections, unlimited funds, all built on the fortune that should have been yours." Isabella finally met his gaze. "Tell me about the night everything changed." Marcus felt the familiar weight of betrayal settle on his shoulders. He'd avoided thinking about that night for 3 years, but with Isabella here, it all came flooding back. "It was supposed to be our engagement party," he began, his voice distant. "Charlotte, my fiancée, had been acting strangely for weeks, but I attributed it to wedding nerves. Nathaniel had been pushing for more aggressive expansion of the company, deals that didn't feel right. I was reviewing the contracts when I found the discrepancies. The phantom shipments to Eastern Europe? You have been thorough." Marcus took a long drink of rum. "I confronted Nathaniel privately, told him I'd discovered what looked like money laundering. He seemed shocked, promised to investigate immediately. 3 hours later, FBI agents arrested me at my own engagement party." Isabella nodded grimly. "While you were in custody, Nathaniel married Charlotte in a private ceremony and assumed control of the company. By the time you made bail, they'd already moved your personal assets into accounts you couldn't access, leaving me with just enough to buy this ship and disappear." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "My own brother orchestrated the perfect betrayal. He got my company, my fiancé, and my reputation all in one night. But he made one mistake," Isabella said, her eyes gleaming. "He got greedy. The legitimate shipping business wasn't enough. He expanded into arms dealing, drug smuggling, even human trafficking. That's when he crossed federal prosecutor Isabella Cordova. And now you're both outcasts," Marcus observed. "Ironic. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's justice." Isabella finally tasted her rum, her expression softening slightly. "I've spent my career putting criminals behind bars, discovering I'd been pursuing an innocent man while the real criminal lived in luxury. It changed something in me. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Marcus found himself drawn to this enigmatic woman. She was nothing like Charlotte, who had been beautiful but shallow. Isabella possessed a fire that reminded him why he'd once believed in justice. "There's something else," Isabella said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I haven't told you about why they want me dead." Marcus turned to face her fully. "What?" "I found evidence of a planned expansion. Nathaniel's moving into weapons trafficking with a terrorist organization. The shipment is scheduled for next week. If it goes through, hundreds of people will die." The weight of her words settled between them like a physical presence. Marcus had stolen from corrupt officials and rival pirates, but he'd never been responsible for innocent lives. "Where?" he asked simply. "Port Royal, Jamaica. The weapons are hidden in a supposedly legitimate medical supply shipment." Isabella pulled up files on her tablet, showing him shipping manifests and photographs. "This is our chance to stop him and expose the truth simultaneously." Marcus studied the information, his strategic mind already working through possibilities. It would be dangerous, suicidal even. Nathaniel would have the port heavily guarded, and Marcus's small crew would be vastly outnumbered. "You're asking me to risk everything," he said finally. "I'm asking you to remember who you used to be," Isabella replied, moving closer to him. "You were Marcus Thornfield, a man who built an empire on honest business. That man wouldn't let innocent people die to protect his own safety." Their faces were inches apart now, and Marcus could smell her perfume mixed with sea salt. In her eyes, he saw not just determination, but something deeper, a faith in the man he used to be. "And what happens after?" he asked quietly. "If we succeed, if we stop the shipment and expose Nathaniel, what happens to the pirate captain and the federal prosecutor?" Isabella's hand touched his cheek gently. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I know we have to try." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Marcus realized that Isabella Cordova had done something no storm or enemy had managed. She'd given him hope. Chapter 3. Betrayal's Edge. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. The Sovereign's Revenge would pose as a medical supply ship delivering emergency aid to Port Royal, allowing Marcus and his crew to infiltrate the harbor where Nathaniel's illegal weapons shipment was scheduled to depart. Isabella would use her federal credentials to access the harbor master's records, confirming the exact location and timing. What they hadn't anticipated was walking into a trap. "It's too quiet," Rodriguez muttered as they approached the dock. The usually bustling port was eerily empty, with only a few scattered workers visible in the distance. Marcus felt the familiar itch between his shoulder blades that had kept him alive through countless dangerous situations. Something was wrong, but they were committed now. Isabella sat beside him in the small boat, her federal identification ready, and her tablet containing all their evidence secured in a waterproof case. "Remember," she said quietly, "we only need to get close enough to photograph the weapon containers and document the ship manifests. Once we have proof, we can call in the authorities. Assuming the authorities aren't already compromised," Marcus replied grimly. "My brother has had 3 years to build his network." They tied off at the dock and split up as planned. Rodriguez and 2 crewmen would create a distraction at the harbor office while Marcus and Isabella located the weapons shipment. The plan had seemed solid on the island. Now it felt like threading a needle in a hurricane. The cargo ship Mercy's Hope sat at the far end of the pier, its white hull gleaming innocently in the morning sun. According to Isabella's intelligence, beneath its facade of medical supplies lay enough weapons to arm a small army. "There," Isabella whispered, pointing to containers being loaded by a crane. "Those markings match the manifests I intercepted." Marcus focused his binoculars on the operation. The workers moved with military precision, and he counted at least 12 armed guards positioned around the ship. This wasn't a simple smuggling operation. It was a fortress. "We need to get closer," Isabella said, but Marcus grabbed her arm. "Wait." Something had caught his attention, a familiar figure directing the loading operation. Even at a distance, Marcus recognized the arrogant posture and expensive suit. "Nathaniel's here." "Your brother?" Isabella's voice was sharp with surprise. "He's supposed to be in New York for a board meeting, which means this shipment is more important than we thought." Marcus studied his brother through the binoculars, feeling the old anger burn in his chest. Or the possibility hit him like a physical blow. He turned to Isabella, seeing his own dawning realization reflected in her green eyes. "They know we're here," she whispered. The confirmation came in the form of approaching footsteps. 20 armed men emerged from behind containers and warehouses, surrounding them with professional efficiency. Marcus reached for his pistol, but stopped when he recognized the woman leading them. Charlotte Thornfield walked toward them with the same elegant grace that had once captivated him, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the harbor's humidity. She wore an expensive business suit and a smile that could freeze fire. "Hello, darling," she said to Marcus, her voice honey over poison. "Did you really think we wouldn't know you were coming?" "Charlotte." Marcus kept his voice level, though his heart was racing. "I should have known you'd be involved in Nathaniel's operation." "Involved?" She laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Marcus, dear, I am the operation. Did you think your simple-minded brother could have orchestrated something this complex on his own?" Isabella stepped slightly forward, her prosecutor's instincts taking over. "Charlotte Thornfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit." "Oh, shut up," Charlotte interrupted, nodding to one of her men. "Dr. Cordova, isn't it? The federal prosecutor who's been causing us so much trouble." The armed man struck Isabella with the butt of his rifle, sending her to her knees. Marcus moved to help her, but found 3 assault rifles aimed at his chest. "Careful, Marcus," Charlotte warned. "We need you alive, but we don't need you unbroken." "What do you want?" Marcus asked, helping Isabella to her feet despite the weapons trained on him. "What I've always wanted," Charlotte replied. "Everything." She walked closer, her heels clicking on the concrete pier. "You see, darling, you were always too honest for your own good. Your precious morals made you weak. I needed a man who could build an empire without being constrained by silly things like laws and ethics. So you betrayed me for my own brother." "I used your brother," Charlotte corrected. "Just like I used you. Nathaniel was easy to manipulate, feed his ego, flatter his intelligence, make him think he was the mastermind. Meanwhile, I built real power. Arms dealers, drug cartels, corrupt officials, all answering to me." Marcus felt sick as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. "The night I was arrested, I fed Nathaniel information about your investigation, told him you were planning to expose him. The poor fool thought he was protecting himself when he called the FBI. He never realized he was just a puppet." Charlotte's smile widened. "And the beautiful part is, he still doesn't know." Isabella wiped blood from her lip, her eyes blazing with fury. "You're going to prison for this." "Am I?" Charlotte pulled out a satellite phone and speed dialed a number. "Nathaniel?" "Yes, they're here, both of them." She paused, listening. "No, stick to the plan. The weapons ship leaves in an hour, and then we'll deal with our guests." She ended the call and looked at Marcus with mock sympathy. "I'm afraid you won't be leaving Port Royal, darling. Neither of you will. A tragic accident. The notorious pirate Captain Blackwood and a rogue federal prosecutor killed while attempting to steal weapons from a legitimate medical supply shipment." "People know we're here," Isabella said desperately. "If we disappear, your own people think you've gone rogue, Dr. Cordova. And as for Marcus's crew," Charlotte nodded toward the harbor, where smoke was rising from the direction of the Sovereign's revenge. "Pirates are so unreliable, always fighting among themselves." Marcus felt the last of his hope crumble as he realized the magnitude of Charlotte's planning. She hadn't just betrayed him once. She'd been orchestrating his destruction for years, waiting for the perfect moment to eliminate him permanently. But as the armed men moved to escort them toward a waiting warehouse, Isabella caught his eye and mouthed a single word: "Trust." Her hand brushed against his, and he felt something small and hard pressed into his palm. Looking down, he glimpsed the corner of a small device, a satellite beacon she must have activated when Charlotte was gloating. Hope, it seemed, died harder than he'd thought. Chapter 4: Redemption's Dawn. The warehouse reeked of fish and diesel fuel, its concrete walls sweating in the Caribbean heat. Marcus sat bound to a chair beside Isabella, both of them bloodied but unbroken after hours of interrogation. Charlotte had been thorough, wanting to know exactly who else might have access to Isabella's evidence, and whether Marcus had hidden resources she hadn't accounted for. "You always were stubborn," Charlotte said, pacing before them like a predator. "It's almost dawn, darling. The weapons ship departed 2 hours ago, and Nathaniel is already halfway back to New York. Your little crusade ends here." "Does he know?" Marcus asked quietly. "Does Nathaniel know you're the real power behind his empire?" Charlotte paused, her perfect mask slipping for just a moment. "What does it matter now?" "Because he's your weakness," Isabella said, her voice hoarse but determined. "You need him to maintain the legitimate business front. If he discovered what you really are, he won't." But Charlotte's voice carried a note of uncertainty. "Nathaniel sees what I want him to see." The satellite beacon Isabella had pressed into Marcus's hand was hidden beneath his chair, hopefully still transmitting their location. But to whom? Her federal contacts thought she was rogue, and his pirate crew was supposedly dead. Their rescue would have to come from an unexpected source. It came in the form of an explosion that shook the entire warehouse. "What the hell?" Charlotte spun toward the door as automatic weapons fire erupted outside. Her men scrambled for defensive positions while she grabbed a radio. "Report," she barked. Static crackled before a panicked voice responded. "They came from the water. Multiple boats, professional equipment. We're being overrun." Marcus smiled despite his circumstances. "You underestimated Rodriguez. He's been planning for a double cross since we met you." The warehouse doors burst open, and armed figures poured in. But these weren't Marcus's pirates. They wore tactical gear and moved with military precision. The leader removed his helmet, revealing the weathered face of a man Marcus had never expected to see again. "Agent Harrison?" Isabella gasped. FBI agent David Harrison had been Isabella's partner before she'd gone rogue. He looked older, grimmer, but his eyes held the same dedication to justice that Marcus remembered from his own case 3 years ago. "Dr. Cordova," Harrison said, his team securing the warehouse with efficient brutality. "When we received your beacon signal and the data packet you transmitted, we realized you'd been right all along." "Data packet?" Charlotte's face went white. Isabella smiled through her split lip. "I uploaded everything to federal servers before we left the island. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence about your operation, and Nathaniel's role as your unwitting puppet. Impossible. You've been with us for hours. The transmission was automatic," Isabella explained. "Triggered if I failed to check in every 12 hours. Marcus, meet the federal justice system's newest star witness against Thornfield Shipping." Charlotte raised her pistol toward Isabella, but Marcus threw himself sideways, chair and all, knocking the weapon aside. The shot went wild as FBI agents swarmed Charlotte's remaining men. "It's over, Charlotte," Marcus said as Harrison cut his bonds. "Your empire, your schemes, your betrayals, all of it ends here." But Charlotte wasn't finished. With desperate strength, she broke free from the agent trying to restrain her and ran toward a speedboat moored at the warehouse's water entrance. Marcus pursued her, his muscles screaming from hours of captivity. They struggled at the boat's edge, Charlotte fighting with the fury of a cornered animal. The gun was between them, both hands gripping it as they swayed over the water. "You could have had everything," she screamed. "I offered you an empire." "Built on lies and blood," Marcus replied, his superior strength slowly turning the weapon away from him. "I'd rather have nothing than that." "Then you'll have nothing!" Charlotte released the gun and lunged for a grenade on her belt, a final, desperate attempt to destroy them both. But Isabella was there, tackling Charlotte into the water as the explosive device flew harmlessly into the harbor. The explosion sent water cascading over the pier, but both women surfaced, Isabella supporting an unconscious Charlotte as FBI agents pulled them to safety. 3 months later, the courtroom in New York was packed with media and spectators for the trial of the decade. Charlotte Thornfield sat in orange prison scrubs, her once perfect appearance now haggard and broken. Beside her, Nathaniel looked shell-shocked as he testified about his sister-in-law's manipulation and the crimes committed in his name. Marcus, cleaned up and wearing a tailored suit for the first time in 3 years, sat in the gallery next to Isabella. She had been fully reinstated to the prosecutor's office and was leading the case against Charlotte's criminal organization. The defendant, Isabella said in her closing argument, built an empire of exploitation and death, using deception and manipulation to turn family against family, brother against brother. But justice, as we've seen, has a way of prevailing. After the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts, Marcus and Isabella walked out of the courthouse together. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city streets, and Marcus felt a strange sense of closure. "So, what happens now?" Isabella asked as they stood on the courthouse steps. "Marcus Thornfield is officially exonerated, his assets restored. The world is apologizing to you. And yet I find myself missing the simplicity of piracy," Marcus replied with a smile. "No board meetings, no legal complexities, just the wind and the waves." "There might be a way to have both," Isabella said carefully. "Thornfield Shipping needs new leadership, someone who understands both legitimate business and the criminal elements that might threaten it." "Are you offering me a job, Dr. Cordova?" "I'm offering you a partnership, Captain Blackwood." Isabella moved closer, her green eyes bright with possibility. "Your company could become a force for good, using your knowledge of the criminal underworld to help law enforcement while running a legitimate business." Marcus considered this, looking out over the harbor where ships came and went with their various cargoes and secrets. "And where does that leave us?" he asked quietly. Isabella's hand found his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "Wherever we want it to." As the sun set over New York Harbor, Marcus realized that sometimes the greatest treasures weren't gold or jewels, but second chances and the courage to seize them. He'd lost everything once to betrayal, but he'd gained something far more valuable, a partner who believed in justice and redemption. The storm had passed, and calm waters lay ahead. The end.